When it comes to gory and disturbing movies, nothing does it quite like body horror, which is one of the hardest subgenres to watch and make. Filled to the brim with gore, mutations, torture, and mutilation, the genre is not for the faint-hearted, that's for sure. So today on Top 5 Scary Videos, I'm going to be counting down our list of the top 5 scary body horror movies that are hard to watch, part 2. Before we begin though, be sure to stick around until the end of the video where I'll be responding to some of your comments. And let's jump in. Coming in at 5, Eraserhead. Released in 1977 and directed by David Lynch, Eraserhead is an experimental body horror film starring Jack Nance, who plays Henry, a man who resides alone in a bleak apartment surrounded by industrial gloom. However, when he discovers that an earlier fling with Mary X has left her pregnant, he marries her and has her move in with him. Things then take a decidedly strange turn when the couple's baby turns out to be a bizarre lizard-like creature that won't stop crying. When Henry finally discovers what's beneath the swaddle and bandages of his baby, things take a dark and spine-tingling detour into madness and mutilation. From the baby itself, the non-stop crying, to a terrifying woman in the radiator surrounded by worms, the entire movie is nauseating and disturbing, yet it makes for one hell of a ride, that's for sure. I've also watched this movie too many times on dates. First dates. Probably why I never got a second. Now, despite receiving negative reviews upon its release, in 2004 Eraserhead was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry by the United States Library of Congress. This selection is based on a film being deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. In 2010, the Online Film Critics Society compiled a list of the 100 best directorial debuts, listing what they felt were the best first-time feature films by noted directors. Eraserhead ultimately placed second in the poll, behind Orson Welles' Citizen Kane. More interesting still, Stanley Kubrick revealed to David Lynch that Eraserhead was his favourite film of all time, with it also serving as an influence on Kubrick's 1980 film, The Shining. The film currently holds an approval rating of 90%, with the general consensus reading, David Lynch's surreal Eraserhead uses detailed visuals and a creepy score to create a bizarre and disturbing look into a man's fear of parenthood. Coming in at number 4, we have Teeth. Released in 2007 and directed by Mitchell Lichtenstein, Teeth is a horror comedy starring Jess Wexler, who plays Dawn, an active member of a high school chastity club, but when she meets Toby, nature takes its course and the pair answer the call. They suddenly learn she is a living example of the vagina dentata myth, when the encounter takes a grisly turn. Vagina dentata is a folktale in which a woman's vagina is said to contain teeth, with the associated implication that sex may result in severe injury or even castration. Anyway, after Toby tries to assault Dawn, her body comes to her defense, chomping down and biting off his, well, you know. From that point on, Dawn quickly learns that her condition is a means of protection for her against those who might try to harm her. Teeth has some truly terrifying moments that require very little explanation. I mean, the movie is about a vagina with teeth that bites off penises. It's always going to be brutal. Foundation Artistic Director at the Sundance Film Festival, Mistel Brabi, claimed that Teeth was one of the most talked about films at the Sundance Film Festival that year. The film received mostly positive reviews, with it garnering an 80% approval rating, with the general consensus reading, smart, original, and horrifically funny. Teeth puts a fresh feminist spin on horror movie tropes. Coming in at number 3, Cabin Fever. Released back in 2002 and directed by Eli Roth in his directorial debut, Cabin Fever is a horror comedy body horror that follows a group of college graduates who rent a cabin in the woods for spring break. However, unbeknownst to them, an infection has taken hold of a hermit who lives in the woods, and after one of the students, Bert, accidentally shoots the man, he shows up at their cabin, resulting in the group becoming exposed to the deadly infection. It's a run-of-the-mill horror with some truly disturbing imagery, including skin peeling off and bloody vomiting. The bathtub scene has truly stuck with me for life. Whenever I shave my legs, I have the genuine fear that today may be the day that the skin comes off completely. The inspiration for the movie's story was actually born out of reality, with it coming from Roth's real-life experience during a trip to Iceland when he developed a skin infection. The movie is an homage to low-budget horrors including Night of the Living Dead, Deliverance, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Evil Dead, and The Blair Witch Project. Peter Travers of Rolling Stone stated that, I quote, Cabin Fever finds an unusually potent blend of dread, gore, and gallow humor, and is a blast of good, gory fun that just won't quit. The movie currently holds a 62% approval rating, with the general consensus reading, more gory than scary, Cabin Fever is satisfied with paying homage to genre conventions rather than reinventing them. Despite its mixed reviews, the movie did go on to spawn a handful of sequels and even a prequel, with with Ty West directing the 2009 sequel, Cabin Fever 2: Spring Fever. In at number 2, we have The Fly. Now, a lot of you were upset that I didn't include The Fly on part 1 of our list, but I wanted to include some fresh picks, movies that we don't discuss as much on this channel. However, here it is now, so you can all rest easy. Released in 1986 and directed by David Cronenberg, The Fly is a science fiction body horror film starring Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis. Based loosely on the 1957 short story of the same name, the film tells the story of an eccentric scientist, Seth Brundle, who after one of his experiments goes wrong slowly turns into a fly hybrid creature. Now, what makes this movie so fantastic is the simple fact that if you were to watch the first half of The Fly, you may very easily confuse it for a quirky romance about a reporter who falls in love with a somewhat antisocial scientist. However, not long after Seth Brundle begins to transform, completely changing the atmosphere of the movie. From that point on, it's filled to the brim with awful imagery, including acidic vomit, impregnation horror, and of course the final product, the Brundle Fly. The Academy Award-winning makeup was designed and executed by Chris Wallace over a period of 3 months, with the transformation process intending to be a metaphor for the aging process. To that end, Brundle loses his hair, teeth, and fingernails, with his skin becoming more and more discolored and lumpy. The Fly was critically acclaimed upon its release, with most of the praise going to Jeff Goldblum's performance and the special effects. Film critic Gene Siskel named The Fly as the 10th best film of 1986, and to this day the film holds a 92% approval rating, with the general consensus reading, David Cronenberg combines his trademark affinity for gore and horror with strongly developed characters, making The Fly a surprisingly affecting tragedy. And finally, coming in at number 1, Slyther. This is honestly one of my favourite films. We don't talk about enough. I feel like this is the first time I'm talking about it. I could be wrong. Released in 2006 and directed by James Gunn in his directorial debut, Slyther is a horror comedy body horror movie starring Nathan Fillion, Elizabeth Banks, and Michael Rooker. The movie takes place in the small town of Wellesley in South Carolina that becomes invaded by a malevolent alien parasite after a meteorite housing the monsters comes crashing down to Earth. Now, it's always been clear as day that James Gunn's mind doesn't work the same way as everyone else's does, with Slyther perhaps being his most screwed up movie to date. Now, these parasitic aliens begin infecting the residents of the small town in a truly disgusting way, with Grant, played by Rooker, being the first person infected and becoming a disgusting tentacle-clad creature. He then goes on to infect a woman with hundreds of alien babies, resulting in her body swelling up like a giant balloon. Honestly, this film is, as I like to say, tough to swallow, but a damn good time regardless. While the movie was a box office failure, it did receive positive reviews from critics, with it since being dubbed a cult film. Producer Paul Brooks offered an explanation as to why Slyther may have failed to catch on with filmgoers, stating, "I think that because it was a comedy horror instead of pure horror is where the problem lay. It's the first comedy horror in a long time and maybe the marketplace just isn't ready for comedy horror yet. It's difficult to think of other explanations." Despite that, the film now holds an 86% approval rating, with the general consensus reading, "A slimy B-movie homage oozing with affection for low-budget horror films, Slyther is creepy and fun, if you've got the stomach for it." Slyther also went on to be listed as one of the top 25 DVDs of the year by Peter Travers in Rolling Stone magazine back in 2006. Well, there we have it. Do you guys agree with our list? Were there any body horror movies that we missed? Leave us all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below, and perhaps we can do a part 3. Before I go though, I just want to respond to a few comments from one of our last videos, top 5 most haunted places in the world. Old Man Out Prop said, "Who would collect more souls, Lucifer the Queen of Darkness or Keegan a ginger?" Straight savagery. I respect it. Probably me, but Keegan a close second. AI145 said, "Funny how hotels tend to get haunted, almost like it's a way to get more people to show up." It's very true. I didn't think about it that way. It is a good way to lure people in, but also it could very well be haunted because a lot of people stay in hotels. Old people, young people, murderers. Goes down in those rooms. Cheetah Karina said, "Never seen Buffy either. I am with you." Thank you, Cheetah. We're in this together. Don't let the haters get us. John Dreisker said, "I think brides should avoid staircases on their wedding day. At least 2 places in New Jersey are haunted by brides who fell downstairs and perished." Well, it sucks to be them. Or maybe they just really didn't want to marry their husband and they were like, ugh, don't know what to do, so they would just like drop and roll. That's what I would do. No Love the Pain said, "When she showed her tattoo and giggled." So cute. Thanks. I don't even remember doing that, but I don't even remember giggling. I tend not to do that. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with laughter or joy. GL Prime 2814 said, "Sleep peacefully? Nah, I'd rather be wide awake watching top 5 scariest videos with Lucy." I respect that. Just stay up forever until you die. And on that note, if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another scary vid. And until next time, see you later. He's burp. The Fly.